In the 1970s, the Big Apple was rotten to the core.
New York City in the middle of the 70s was a rough-looking place.
New York was wilder than any Wild West town, and probably deadlier.
But amidst the ruins and squalor, a golden era of music was born. Whilst on the streets of the Bronx, hip-hop sprung up.
We didn't have nothing here in the South Bronx. I mean, hip-hop really came because there was really nothing to do here.
I was a guy that never went downtown. I stayed in the neighborhood and formed a culture called hip-hop.
Life downtown in the shadow of the skyscrapers could be tough. For millions of New Yorkers not fortunate enough to belong to the city's elite, the glamour of Studio 54 and the bohemian atmosphere of CBGB were a far cry from the reality of the streets.
You talked about there was corruption inside government, there was a problem with fiscal spending, and there was always a distrust of the mayorship around that time. So you had services in New York City that were limited, and the first areas that felt that the limited services were the areas where Black and Hispanic people were living. Thus, you know, Uptown, Brooklyn, and the Bronx were having a rough time at it and kind of like dipped into the realm of being slums.
Well, I mean, this is a long history. It goes back to when they built the Horse Bronx Expressway. Robert Moses, who was a giant builder, had this mandate that even superseded that of the elected officials to build what he felt was necessary. And it was a big construction project that went through the Bronx. And it really split the area apart. It went right through the heart of the South Bronx. It disrupted the neighborhoods on either side. And the area never quite recovered from it psychologically. The sense of cohesion was lost.
The South Bronx resembled a war zone. Buildings that hadn't been demolished were torched by insurance scamming landlords desperate to get out, and a citywide blackout in '77 served only to enhance the atmosphere of lawlessness. Unable to go to Studio 54 and lacking any local club scene, young people took matters into their own hands.
It started with the de-emphasizing of music education in the school systems. And since so many things were taken away from the community sort of like culturally compensated for that with the creation of making something out of things that just happen to be around. Old turntables, old record collections, hooking systems up into street poles for wiring.
Open-air disco parties sprung up on the streets and in the parks of the South Bronx, and the DJs who hosted them became neighborhood stars. One of the first to get a reputation for doing something different was DJ Kool Herc.
I was a guy that never went downtown. I stayed in the neighborhood and formed a culture called hip-hop. I was the guy that didn't follow with the rest of the people.
Well, basically, Kool Herc was the guy who got two turntables and a system, came out in a big park, and he rocked the park, you know what I'm saying?
It wasn't called hip-hop when I was doing it. It was called a jam. Coming to the jam.
These parties were an outlet for a lot of aggressive energy that was bottled up otherwise.
Bronx in the house! Is everybody in the house?
As the nascent hip-hop scene absorbed the street gang's energy, it began to flourish and the word spread across town. Subway trains tagged up in the Bronx's vast train yards took graffiti, hip-hop's visual message, right into the heart of Manhattan.